Dzień dobry. Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well and having a great Digital Dragons. My name is Celia. I've been in the video game industry for the past 15 years, and my background is in cognitive science. So I have a PhD in psychology that I had in Sorbonne in France. I'm French. And I've been in the game industry for the past 15 years. And back then, UX was not really a thing. And it was like something that people were like reluctantly talk about. And we did not even have a term for it. We had playtest back then, but it was not as formalized. So I started my career at Ubisoft, where there were a lot of processes. Then I moved to Ubisoft Paris. Then I moved to Ubisoft Montreal, where I worked at the playtest lab, and I worked more specifically on the Rainbow Six franchise. Then I moved to LucasArts, San Francisco, where I worked on a bunch of Star Wars games that never came out, sadly, like 1313. And after Disney bought Lucas and LucasArts closed down, I went to Epic Games. I became the director of UX at Epic, and I worked at the studio level. So I worked on developing the UX initiative and strategy there, developed like playtest lab there, and I worked on a lot of different projects like Unreal Engine 4, multiple games, and of course, Fortnite. And I left Epic in 2017, and ever since then, I've been doing consulting work. So I consider myself a game UX strategist, and I'm a freelancer, so I help a lot of teams, small and big teams, either to train their people or to evaluate the process or to evaluate their projects, their games, so that they can accomplish their goals faster and more efficiently. Just so that everybody's clear in the room, I'm just gonna re-explain what UX is about. So let's say that you wanna ship something or create something for someone else. So usually what we do, like this presentation is made for other humans, not for myself. Whether it is a park that you do for the public or a video game or presentation, when you think only about how you're gonna design it, the architecture, but in a silo, this is your like design intention. But if you don't test it and not look at how people are going to use it, why they want to use this park, what's going to matter for them, usually this is what happens. Their user experience doesn't really match the design intention, at least for some users, not all, of course. But we had that wishful thinking because, it's a nice straight line and people should take that straight line. And also it's cheaper. Let's just have a straight line. It's going to be cheaper. We can ship it earlier. And then, of course, what we hope it's going to happen is not happening. And then we try to patch it by trying to correct it and say, no, you should not use it that way, but it's not working very well. And when we do that, initially we think that it's gonna, we don't have time for UX, let's just do whatever, it's gonna be cheaper. And in the end, we actually waste time and a lot of money because now it looks ugly, like this is not really cool. So we're gonna have to redo a bunch of stuff because, of course, once it's shipped or implemented, it's much more difficult and more expensive to do. So UX is really a mindset more than anything. It's about considering that you're making something for humans. Those humans have certain limitations, physical limitations and cognitive limitations, but they also have their own will. You can control what they want to do with the system that you're creating for them. And we think about this all throughout the development of the game, during the process, and ever after, of course, if we work on a live service. So it's a strategy. It's not something that happens just at one point in the process. It is about thinking differently about the process and taking all that into account. And hopefully now there's more people who talk about user experience, but it's still not there yet. There's still a lot of people who don't have UX profiles or only think about UX extremely late in the process when it's not offering enough time to figure stuff out. So What I'm trying to do here is to reassess that this is a strategy and give you a few tips about what that means. So the first step, if you have UX as a strategy in your studio for your project, is to have alignment. And this is usually already a problem for a lot of teams, is making sure we all understand and we all agree on what experience we are going to offer to whom. It seems obvious, but it's actually, there's a lot of misalignment on teams most of the time. And there's also misalignment between the different teams. So maybe the game team wants to do a type of hardcore game for a certain type of people, but then the business team wants to have a broader game, and there can be misalignment everywhere. But also within the team, sometimes not everybody agrees, and we all try to vouch for our own features. So it's not always easy to ensure we exactly know what we want to do, what we want to offer, and who is our target audience. Because we're not going to have the same strategy whether we want to offer a game for, I don't know, hyper-casual players versus hardcore players on a very specific genre. It's not going to be the same strategy. So it's really, really important to get that right. And I'm just going to show you a few misconceptions about UX along the way. There was one big misconception that I still hear today, that UX is going to distort design intentions. So that really matters for when we think about alignment for the user experience. I still have today questions like, but what about if you do a Souls game? Do we really need UX practices because it's just about making things easier, isn't it? No, UX is about understanding what you want to offer to users, to players in our case, and make sure that this is actually what they experience. So it's all about allowing you to accomplish your goal, even if your goal is a bit sadistic and you want your players to suffer, then if it's by design, then we're going to help you do that as long as it's ethical, so as long as there's consent, which is the case for a Souls game. So this is really what user experience is about. We don't use the same strategy when we think about user experience for a tool. Think about the tool that you're using, like an engine or a collaborative tool or a design tool. For a tool, we really want the tool to help users accomplish their goals. It's not the case for games. It's not a tool. We don't play a game just in order to accomplish a goal. We play the game for the pleasure of playing it. So games are an art form. There's really that idea that we intend to offer a specific emotional journey to players. We want them to feel certain things. So we're definitely going to take that into account when we work on UX for a game. And in developer here, I mean everyone working into the development of a game. So anyone from QA to PR to community manager, you're all participating at your level into contributing to what the players are going to experience in the end. So you should all be concerned with this. But because the users, they don't know what you're making, they're not in your head, they might not experience what you want them to experience because they're only interacting with what we call the image of the system, so the image of the engine in our case. So yes, it's going to be the UI, but everything that they perceive and interact with. And so you're not shipped with your game. So we want to make sure that what they experience is what you intended for them. So really, basically, this is what user experience is about. And so back to aligning what experience you want to offer. In UX, we use what we call heuristics. So let's say guidelines, broad guidelines, but also very precise guidelines that UX designers are going to use and UX researchers. These are here to help us. But again, in a game, we will break some of those guidelines because we want to break them. So one of the guidelines in usability to make a product usable, easy to use, efficient. We think about minimum workload, for example. We want to make sure that people don't have to think about stuff too much. But in the case of an action game, we do want to increase the workload. We do want for players to have to think about their teammates as they shoot their enemies. So it is increasing the workload, but we do that by design. So one of the most important things when we work on UX strategy is to start by defining where do you want to challenge your players. What are the things where players are going to have to work for? Is it going to be a physical challenge? Do they have to mash buttons? Is it going to be a cognitive challenge? What sort of cognitive challenge? Do you want to challenge their attention, their memory? You might also want to challenge the perception. A game like Monument Valley plays around with your perception. This is totally fine, but you really have to define where you want to challenge players. Where are we going to break those rules by design, because this is what we want to offer, and where we do not want to challenge players. This is extremely important to define. This is not what the game is about. I'm going to give you an example in Fortnite. This is a very old screenshot from Fortnite from back when I was working with the team. Fortnite is a game where you need to craft stuff, and where the team wanted to challenge players is all about strategy, tactics. What is the best weapon that I can craft right now with the resources that I have for the goal that I have. This is where we want to challenge players. It's like a decision-making challenge. Where we don't want to challenge players is to remember. It's not a memory game. It's not about discovering recipes. It's not about memorizing the name of what you want to craft, the ingredients that you need, how many of each, what's the ingredient that you're missing. So since we're not challenging players' memory for crafting recipes and ingredients, we're going to allow players to pin this on their HUD. So we're going to alleviate this memory challenge, memory load that we don't want for players, so that players can focus on what's really the challenge of Fortnite. So this is really what's going to define our decision making. I insist because this is something that I see a lot. Like we add like a feature in the game because we saw it in a different game. Maybe it's going to be difficult to find a health pack in your game. Is your game a Where's Wally, a Where's Waldo, Where's Charlie? I don't know what name it has here. Is it that type of challenge? Is it a visual challenge, like finding a visual element in your game? Because if it's difficult to find, then this is where you're challenging players. If it's not, then it has to be super obvious. And this is how we make decisions. No game is ever perfect in terms of UX, so it really has to be it has to make sense for what you want to offer. So anytime you want to add a feature or you're trying to solve a problem, like trying to get players to use something or use a feature, ask yourself why. Like if you're adding a feature, why is this going to matter for our players, for the experience that we want to offer? Is this really bringing something to the experience or not? If you're not sure, then maybe we should not put that much effort, because it's taking a lot of effort to make games, into that feature. Maybe you love that feature, and I get it. It's hard to, apart from a feature that we love, but a huge part of making games is to actually cut down on stuff at some point. So think about that. Why should players care? Why does that really matter for the experience? Does that really fit the experience that we want to offer? The answer is maybe or no, but maybe you should not do it. Then if the answer is yes, you think about how you're going to make it work, what are the functions they're going to put in place for players, and then last thing is what it's going to look like. What is the shape of it, the form, what I mean by that, visual and auditive form, anything that players are going to perceive. And then when you test your game, because you should regularly test your game, as players interact with the form, do they get to why does that matter for them? That's the zoom in, zoom out kind of thing that we do, and that is part of the strategy, and that should definitely guide also how you test your game. We're definitely not gonna test everything and make sure that players understand everything. We're gonna have some hypotheses and focus on things that really matters most for our game. The other thing that I also often see is, of course, you create your game and you have your gameplay loops and you have your progression systems, and usually they're really like you have documents on it, and that's totally fine, and usually they're there. But what I see often not happening, it's not clearly conveyed to players. And this is really something that's going to matter a lot for your UX strategy. Can players understand, how they can grow in the game, and from the next thing that they need to do in the game, can the reward that they're receiving, is it meaningful for them? Can they know what to do with this reward? Because oftentimes we're going to give a lot of rewards for players, and we say, oh, we're going to give them, I don't know, gold ore, and because it's precious, they should be excited about it. But if you remember, I don't know if you looked at the previous screen when I showed you that I needed copper ore to craft something in Fortnite. This is what I'm going to care about. I want to craft something in Fortnite. What I'm missing is copper ore. So I get that gold is more precious than copper in real life. But if you give me gold, I don't have any recipes to craft something with gold, but I am missing copper. So I'm going to actually be more excited, and we'll find a quest more meaningful if you give me copper. And this is how we have to think with the progression systems, so that the short-term goals, like players are going to have the rewards that lead them to the medium-term goals, that also guide them towards the super long-term goal, save the princess, save the world, be the best, because that's super, super far away, like catch all the Pokemons. That's not going to happen anytime soon. So if we don't have any clear medium-term goals that are clearly shown and expressed to players, they're going to have a hard time bridge both. And to make it also meaningful, you have to not just think about extrinsic motivation. You do this and then you're going to get that. We usually also use intrinsic motivation. So that's a theory helping us understand why people do the things they do, because sometimes we do things that are not bringing any rewards from outside the activity. And there is a very strong theory, has been around for a while, called SDT, self-determination theory, that explains that we are intrinsically more motivated to do an activity when this activity satisfies our needs for competence, autonomy, and relatedness. I don't think it's important to feel that a dichotomy between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. I think you should think about how your extrinsic rewards can make players feel more competent, autonomous, and feel that relatedness with others. Competence is really the sense of progression. Can players understand how to progress? That's why if they don't understand, how to progress on the long term, and they don't have this medium-term goal that is easier to accomplish. Like, let's say World of Warcraft, like it's super long to get like the latest level, but you have a medium-term goal that's fairly clear, like the mount, and you see people with the mount like, oh my god, that sounds really great, I want the mount. That gives you a medium-term goal that's going to make the next quest meaningful to accomplish, because you want to get the mount, and you will get it soon enough. It's not like a super, super long-term goal that you know you're not going to get anytime soon. So those rewards and clear goals can help players feel competent because they feel that they're progressing. So it could be skill-based, but it can also, in the case of RPGs, be more artificial. You level up and then you gain something that artificially makes you more powerful within the game. Autonomy is about self-expression, making meaningful choices. I think a game like Grand Theft Auto, there's a lot of ways for you to accomplish your goals. You're not micromanaged in a game. You can define, or a game like Minecraft, where you can create a lot of different things. So usually the more autonomy you give, that's going to be more intrinsically motivating. and relatedness. So we are a very social species. We care about each other. We would not have survived our predators if we had not collaborated with each other. So yes, we focus a lot of competition, but collaboration is actually really important to us, and it's meaningful to help someone out, to join people for a raid or whatever. So this can be really important and interesting to think about, and not just in the micro level for your game, but also at the strategy level. You know, how all these systems in your game are gonna get together, and how we can express that to players so it can all fit nicely and they can be excited to play your game. So that's the first step, and that's the biggest step. The others, I'm not going to spend as much time on it. The second step is really a shift in perspective. And that's also a problem that we have, because when we have a UX strategy, what we do is we think about the people who are going to use a product, play our games. It's not for us. Of course, we love our games that we're making, hopefully most of the time, but we are making games for other people. And one of the misconceptions of UX that I hear a lot is like, we can do that later. Let's UX the game later, as if UX was a verb. Just like magically, you know, with a magic wand, like poof, we're gonna UX the game. And so there's a tendency, instead of regularly checking what's going on, like our assumptions on the game, does it verify when we test the game with our audience? There's a tendency to be like, no, we can't. It's not ready for testing yet. I don't know if you're a UX researcher, how many times people say that to us. It's not ready for testing yet. If you're waiting for your game to be ready for testing, it's probably too late, way too late to test, because we want to test things in development when it's actually cheap and easy to change stuff, not once the park is shipped and you have to redo everything, because that's extremely costly. We have a tendency to think that it's going to be okay, or if you're making a game for hardcore gamers, you have this wishful thinking that, oh, they're going to get it. You know, they're hardcore gamers. They're going to get it. It's going to be fine. So we have a tendency to think, you know, to draw conclusions really quickly, and we think it's going to be okay. The problem is that the brain is extremely biased, and we have a tendency to draw the wrong conclusion, especially the ones that we think is going to happen because we hope this is what's going to happen. We have a tendency to hope for the best, and this is a bias that we have. Players also have this tendency. They are not carefully going to read all the elements that you give them. Most of them don't read, and they're going to draw conclusions from what you're trying to convey, just based on the few elements, and they're going to be super quick, and they're probably going to draw the wrong conclusions. And then they're going to think that the feature is for something else, even though you thought that it was clear enough for players. Our brain is really complex and really fascinating. We can do amazing things, go to the moon, maybe to Mars one day. But we can only accomplish those great things if we understand how limited our brains also are. This is a very extremely simplified version of what's going on in the brain when we process information. It starts with a perception of a stimulus, then a change in memory happens. It's actually a new connection. If you learn something today, you're going to have a new synaptic connection that's going to happen. And depending on how much attention you are paying, the process is going to be better, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very complex, but very broadly speaking, this is what happens. But the problem is perception is subjective, attention resources are extremely scarce, and memory is fallible. We do not perceive the world as it is in reality. It's a construction of the brain. Our attention resources are really scarce. If someone is texting you right now because you have a problem at work, you're not really going to be able to follow what I'm telling you. We can really we cannot really multitask. We switch from one task to the other, and also we don't have a good memory. We think we do, but we don't, and we also create false memories. Sometimes we think that we remember something that actually never happened. And the problem is that it's not that we have those biases. The problem is that we have those biases, those limitations, and on top of it, we are not aware of them. So again, we have this wishful thinking that, oh yeah, I can totally memorize all the stuff that we talked about in the meeting, no need to take notes, and this is really bound to lead to issues. That's why we call them implicit biases. We have implicit limitations, implicit biases. There's a lot of them. This is a nice representation of all the cognitive biases that we have, so you can find it on Wikipedia. It's called the Cognitive Bias Codex. I don't need you to read everything in there. I just need you to feel overwhelmed, because it is overwhelming. We have to deal with that. And some people are getting mad when we point at them, hey, you're biased right now. It's like, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. And you know what? It's okay. We all are biased. What's not okay is to pretend that we're not and just head towards the wall, and then afterwards realize that we were wrong, and actually we don't even realize that because we have cognitive dissonance. We're going to blame it on something else. It's much better to realize what's going on, to try to anticipate problems from happening. So the gamer's brain, your players are limited. Their brain is heavily biased, but so is yours. And it's much harder to realize that because we don't like to realize that we're biased. We have the curse of knowledge. You know your game too well. You're really not the best person to define if the game is too easy, too hard, if it's understandable or not. You know your game too well. You can't magically remove all the knowledge that you have from your game and pretend that you're a new player. We have the egocentric bias. We have a tendency to think that because I love this feature, or I got it, or my kid got it, everybody's gonna be getting it. It's not the case. We have confirmation bias. We have a tendency to seek the elements, the evidence that is already confirming what we think is happening. So that can happen in a playtest session. If you don't wait for the UX researcher report, you can find signs in what players are doing that actually just comfort what you were thinking, but is not actually really, you're just dismissing a ton of other data that is actually going against what you thought. We have self-fulfilling prophecy. We have a tendency to think if we believe, let's say, only young guys are gonna play our game, so let's just focus on, I don't know, having like things that are, and again, we think that we understand what's going on here. Let's say we only have like half-working women in the game. It's on the game with a lot of violence or whatever. And then we look at the data. No women are playing their game. Well, yes, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy because you made a bunch of assumptions, and maybe because of those assumptions you made decisions, and at the end of the day, well, women maybe did not feel welcome playing your game. It's just hypothetically what can happen. That's self-fulfilling prophecy. Survivorship bias. Let's say you send a survey to players and see, do they like that feature or not? You think that maybe that feature is a bit weak, and then the survey comes out saying, oh no, your players really like this feature, it's not a problem, it's not too weak. Yeah, that's the survivorship bias. It's only the most engaged players that are more likely to answer your survey. So you know what? The players who actually did not like the feature are gone, and they're not answering your survey. This is why UX is heavily rooted in cognitive science and the scientific methods. It's hard to figure out what's going on in the world. That's why it's really important to protect science against ideologies or against wishful thinking, against opinions, because real scientists, and it takes a whole community to do science, not just one person, there's a lot of rules that we follow because we know that we're biased. And we know better than anyone, and that's why we rely on a community to verify when you have academic research. We publish it in a through a peer-reviewed process, because other scientists are going to look at your methodology, try to find, is there maybe like you did something wrong or whatnot. We publish something, and that's not the end of the day. Like, even if the methodology looks good, we actually wait. This is what should happen in science for another team, hopefully somewhere else in the world, that's going to reuse exactly the same data and same methodology to replicate the experiment. And only if it replicates several times, then we can be more sure about what's going on in the world. So of course, in a game, we're not doing all that. We do good enough science. But we do have very specific methodology to have those guardrails against our cognitive biases. So, your gut feelings, have your gut feelings. You're making art. It's okay to have those gut feelings. But treat them as hypotheses that we need to verify to check if indeed your audience is really appreciating that feature as your gut feeling is telling you they will. So we need to have that shift in perspective. Again, it's hard because we're making art, and so opinions are really important. I get it, but it's going to be much more reliable if you do that shift. Okay, this is what I think is going to happen. Let's try. Let's do a smaller version of it. Let's do a prototype, and let's see if players feel what we hope they will feel. Then the third step is to speak the same language. A lot of times we don't necessarily use the same terms, which is okay. I mean, we're still a young industry. And when we talk about UX, a lot of people think about UI. And we all have a lot of roles. It's called UX/UI design that is reinforcing that idea. I think it's really important that we recognize that, yes, UI is going to be important, and yes, UX designers are taking care of some elements of UI, of course. But UX is the whole experience that your users, your players are having with your game. Again, chatting with the community manager is part of the experience. Interacting with the marketing campaign is part of the user experience. All of that is the user experience. Paying for the game, if it's a premium game, downloading the game, installing the launcher, all of that is part of the experience. So yes, the game, and even within the game, the UI is really a tiny, tiny part of what players experience in the game. So I understand that narrowing down to UI is easier to grasp, but when we talk about UX, we talk about everything that players are going to experience in the game. So we need to settle in some of these elements. This is the terms that I'm using with the teams I'm working on. You don't have to use those terms. You can use we don't have a definite a framework to use in the game industry. So by any means, if there's another model that works better for you, use it. I'm not saying that you should absolutely use those terms, but just make sure you understand what is it you're talking about. So in games, I usually talk about usability. Can the game be understandable? Can players understand what you do in the game? And not have any hurdles that are not by design, again. But that's not the end of it, because a game can be usable and boring. So we also need to make sure that the game is fun. I do not like to use the term fun because it's too subjective, so I prefer to talk about engagement and the ability of the game to be engaging. So engageability, it's all about motivation, emotion, game flow, that sort of things. It's really important to be able to have a common language, because if we say for a game that, hey, we have problems that players don't understand what's going on, if we know that it's a problem called form follows function instead of a clarity of a element. So when I do my sessions and talk about UX, I take the example of Fortnite initially for the spike traps. I should have put in there. Now I realize that it would have been better. It was like a plank with spikes. And a lot of people did not recognize this as a plank with spikes. They thought it was maybe looked like ammunition or trees. So this is a clarity problem. The sign is not clear. But we also had players who can understand, like, yes, this looks like a bomb, and everybody agrees, like, they understand the form, but then it's actually a smoke bomb, and they don't really understand the functionality. That's a different issue. If we can name the issue, it's not that they don't understand how it looks like, they understand how it looks like, but they don't get to the functionality. It's going to be a very different ways to solve for it. So it's just going to help us figure out what's going on, why it's happening, and how to solve this problem. And so if we speak the same language, we are going to be able to get to our goals faster and more efficiently. Knowing who does what is also going to be important. There's still a lot of confusion around UX roles in the game industry. So far, we mostly have UX designers, and like I said, they're usually called UX/UI designers. It's very confusing. UX designers are solving problems for users. They follow a design thinking process. Usually they do field research, they prototype, they test, they can do persona research, and what they design is information architecture. You know, how we going to explain these things, where we're going to put this information for players. Like, think about a crafting system. Where do you put the ingredients? How do you classify everything? Where it's going to go in your menu? They also think about how people are going to interact with it. If you have a crafting system, how will players select the ingredients? Is it going to be all pre-selected? Do they need to drag and drop, double click? All that is how players interact with the system. So this is what they do, design thinking to solve problems. Maybe if you have a big team, you have a game designer that can say, well, we need a crafting system, and we're going to have like minimum 3 ingredients, maximum 6. These are the different categories of ingredients. The backpack can be that size, and the player can have a bigger backpack, and these are the different stages of the size of the backpack. And so based on all these elements that usually a system designer, game designer provides, the UX designer is trying to figure out how is this going to work for players so that they don't, struggle using the crafting system, because we want them to craft, we don't want them to struggle with that. And of course, the UX designers can challenge the game designer and say, well, maybe there's too many things. Maybe if we simplify a little bit, we're not going to lose in depth, but it's going to really simplify the stuff for players. The UX designers are trained in human factor psychology and engineering. It's okay if you're coming from art, from UI, from game design to become a UX designer. But when we say UX designer, we mean people who studied a little bit of cognitive science. You don't have to have a PhD, but you need to understand those biases that I was telling about, and know them, and know all, Gestalt theory and Fitts law and all these things that UX designers manipulate so that they can iterate faster and understand faster what's going on. Then the UX researchers are here to verify what experience players actually have, and is this the experience that we wanted for them? If yes, awesome, ship it. Usually the answer is no. Then we try to figure out why. And so we use the scientific, again, a light version of the scientific method to figure stuff out, because it's actually really difficult to understand what's going on and why this is going on. UX data analysts usually do a bit of the same work as UX researchers, except that they use large-scale data. They can use telemetry data. UX researchers can also be data analysts. There's not a strict separation between the two, but usually data analysts are dedicated to business metrics, and we don't necessarily dedicate them to solve UX problems. We should, because it can be super useful. And UX strategists, so the people, director of UX, should be here to manage, coordinate, advocate for UX, push, make sure that within the team, everybody agrees on what experience we want to offer to whom, outside of the team, the support teams, the business team, are we in alignment as well? Are the resources all there for the team, etc., etc.? Do we have the right resources? So if we could have a little bit a clearer version of what's going on, we could speak the same language and get there faster. And the last step is the process. We still don't have a lot of strong processes around UX in the game industry, and the misconception that we hear a lot is there's not time or enough money to do UX. It sounds awesome, but we need to ship, we don't have the time. I don't hear a lot of people today saying that they don't have time for QA, so it's the same thing. It is part of the process, and yes, it is some investment that you're doing now, but it is going to save you money down the line. I promise you that, because you're going to figure stuff out earlier, as long as you think of all your assumptions and your gut feeling as hypotheses, and you use the UX test as a way to verify those hypotheses, and if they're not verified, then try to figure out what's going on. So alignment on who are the users, who are the players, and what experience you want to offer. Have a shift in your perspective, have a common language in the team, and adopt a good process is going to help you have a stronger UX strategy, and hopefully make everybody on the team and the studio think of UX not as a step of a process, but as a mindset that is human-centered. We think about the people who are going to play the game, not just us, grounded in science. Sure, we have opinions, that's totally fine, we're making art, but we treat our opinions as hypotheses that we're testing and verifying. It's a collaborative process. It's not just people with UX in the titles that are concerned by UX. It's everybody, and the team and the studio, and it's benevolent. The goal of human factors and UX is to improve people's lives with technology. It's not to do mind tricks, to treat players as cow milks, and to gain the most money out of them. So having a UX mindset entails considering ethics. We care about inclusion, we care about accessibility, we care about, we need to make money, that's totally fine. But we have to find a right balance that's going to be respectful of players' time and money. So it's incompatible with the use of dark patterns that sadly we're seeing rising, not just in the game industry, but in tech in general. And that's why if you're interested, I started that initiative called Ethical Games, and we're trying to put together a code of ethics in the game industry so that we can protect our art and thrive, and also let players thrive as we think of them. So stuff like guilt tripping, paying to remove discomfort, loot boxes tied to monetization, fear of missing out, loss of aversion, autoplay, especially when you have a game targeted to kids, we need to really reconsider that and think about what can be really harmful, because there's also a lot of moral panics in the game industry. So in the public, I'm not talking about these, I'm talking about where there's actually lines that we should not cross. I think it's important for us to think about this and define them so we can also advance this. Because ethical design and society is not going to happen solely with good intentions. We are too biased for that. They need to be intentionally designed to be inclusive and respectful to users. So that's about it for me. I like to use the Kikendo maturity model to try to see where we are in terms of UX in a studio or on a team. So I invite you to take a look at this. It just shows you maybe where you are, what are the barriers that you can overcome. At best, some studios have a centralized version of UX, so they talk about UX, they have some techniques and some processes. But some studios don't even have processes. I think there's not a lot of rejection of UX anymore, thankfully. Some people do say, oh, we care about the players, but then nothing really is put in place to do that. Then we do some playtests and stuff like that, and Some studios really have a process, starting to have a process. Hopefully one day it's going to be distributed. We'll have a business culture, a UX culture, sorry, with business on board. But yeah, it's not going to be soon. So a few resources to move forward. Have better strategy. You have the Game UX Summit. I'm super excited to announce that this year is going to happen in Antwerp, in Belgium, in September 8th and 9th. Sorry. So you can, if you have any process around UX, and again, whatever it is you're doing, a designer, an analyst, a sound designer, whatever it is, marketing, business, do submit something and join us if you can. That would be super fun. We have the GDC UX Summit every year. There's also grux.org, Game Research and User Experience, as the IGDA Game Interest Group. And they have GUR Summits happening every year. And on my page, also a bunch of resources if you want to dive deeper on any of those topics. So hopefully we can advance UX all together. Remember, it's the concern of everyone. It's a mindset at the end of the day. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Celia, very much for your interesting presentation. And now we've got a couple of minutes for questions and answers. If there are any questions, please use the microphone in front of stage. And also, please do not hesitate to download this QR code through the official Digital Dragons application so that you can leave the feedback for the speaker.
No questions. You got this. Awesome.
Some questions.
Is this working? Okay. If there are no other questions, first of all, thank you for the excellent talk. Apologies in advance for possibly wasting your time on a very vague hypothetical.
No, absolutely not.
That I'm aware might be incompatible with your definition of UX, but do you think it's possible at all for a game to be too UX designed?
I think it's what you said, it's incompatible in the way I perceive UX. To me, it's really at the service of the players. So no, it cannot be too UX if we use that as a verb. Because a great UX is the game of the year. It's a game that players love and they love to play and they don't feel that they've been exploited to pay. That to me is the greatest UX possible. What you're trying to say, I'm guessing, is where we try to exploit maybe users. Do you have an example of what you mean by too UX'd?
Oh yes, of course. It's when systems are too polished and feel too polished. The experience is too smooth without any clunkiness.
Too smooth. So in UX for games, we do think about the challenge. So there if it's too smooth, we actually did not really define the challenges properly, and because we do think about that stuff. We think about the difficulty levels and how we're going to get players to get better and to progress. So yes, there's such a thing as games that are a bit boring because it's too easy, but then to me it's not a great UX because it is too easy, and being too easy or too hard is something that we try to balance.
Sure, not quite what I meant.
Okay, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
What I meant is when you compare modern games to the games of the, let's say, pre-UX era that you referenced, let's say Gothic games from early 00s, there is clunkiness to them. The clunkiness that is mostly eliminated in modern games. Yeah. And there is a player sentiment that values clunkiness over smoothness.
Yeah, so to me, that's a problem with the audience, who we are targeting. Again, that's why you define the experience and to define the audience, because you're not gonna make the same decisions if you're trying to make a game that is for casual players than a game for hardcore gamers. So it's around the discussion that we have with Souls games. Yes, absolutely, there is room for these games, and we don't need to hyper-polish everything to make everything easy to accomplish, as long as it's accessible to all the gamers who want to play that game. Yeah, I think it's fine to have a game where things are not necessarily explained, as long as this is intentional, as you target, you know exactly what you're doing, and you have a specific target in mind, and you verify, and this is working, and people love it, then it's good to me. You don't necessarily have to overdo it. And sometimes it can be a mismatch between what the team wants to do, that's what I was saying, and sometimes the business wants the game to be broader and the team wants the game to be more hardcore. There's room for games that are hardcore, you know. There's room for blueprints type of games, you know, or for, you know, Souls games when it's going to be difficult. As long as this is intentional and you know what you're doing and you're saying, well, we're targeting this is what experience we want to offer, then yes, we're not going to make the same decisions and we're not going to polish the same things as if we want, you know, to make Fortnite or Roblox, something of a bit more broader audience.
Yes, I'm very satisfied with the answer. Thank
Okay, awesome. Yes, we made it. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask, do you have maybe some techniques or processes for smaller teams where maybe you don't have so much data?
Yes.
And maybe what would be the best technique to challenge your own biases? Because in a smaller team, it's probably much more influential.
Absolutely. Yes, that's a great question. So, of course, if you have a big team, you have a lot of resources. It's much harder when you're a small team and you have all these things to do, and it's really difficult. So what I would say is really the mindset is the most important. Like, really keep in mind that what you're doing, yes, you're doing it for you, especially if you're an indie developer, you want to please yourself, which is, again, totally fine. But you also want to earn money and make sure that the game is successful. So regularly try to test, and you don't have, of course, it's better if you hire your UX researcher and you do the test in the proper ways, but you can already at least consult with a UX researcher or hire a third party to do a test, or have a UX strategist on board just a little bit to give you advice and look at what's going on regularly without you spending a lot of money. And again, it is going to be an investment. It is going to be an investment of time and money. But I've worked with indie developers, and even if we just do 1 hour here, 1 hour there, it's still going to be super valuable. People like me who consult can provide some guidance on how to test. We're going to tell you, I know that you can't get people, like 50 people, completely independent from you, but we're going to guide you to ask very objective questions. We're going to tell you, don't ask them if they have fun. Don't have them if they found the interface of the controls intuitive. Ask them, what is this? Show a screenshot. Who's winning here and why? How can you tell? Ask very concrete questions so that you can try to figure out what's going on. So there are ways to figure that out, and in the resources that are shared, this is where you can find all these people who share that. You can watch the summit videos, and a lot of people share a lot of things. People are passionate about UX, and so you have a lot of resources out there that can help you out. There's also a lot of students that are eager to get into the game industry. You should definitely pay them. That's all I'm saying, do not. But it's going to be easier for you to get people that, you don't necessarily need a huge amount of resources. You can get people on board and get their advice. A lot of people are happy to share. So you can start there and really think about the mindset, learn about these things by reading a book or looking at a website or watching a GDC video. That's already going to help you a lot to get that perspective shift.
Thank you.
Hello, Celia. I wanted to ask about the UX research.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that we all biased. And my question is, how can I be sure that the feedback from the user, from the player, is, let's say, accurate?
Yeah.
That the player tells me about, I don't know, emotions, that he actually felt that emotions he's talking about, not something different.
It's actually extremely hard. Serving people, it's a science, and we go through great length to really do that properly. What you have to remember is what you ask people is to tell about their memories of their experience. It's already different than the actual experience that they had. Memories is fallible, so maybe there's something that happened towards the end of their match or whatever, and they're gonna be like super annoyed about this, but everything that happened up until that moment, they were super happy about it. But they're gonna be super pissed because then one thing happened and they're gonna latch on it in your survey. So when you have a UX researcher working on this, they know about these things, and that's why we usually ask several times the same question through different ways, that we try to ask very concrete questions. And we also ask questions about their perception, but we also ask questions about what they do, and we actually look at what they do. That's why telemetry data is really important, and crossing different data, because what people say they do is different from what they actually do. So of course we have to preserve their privacy. I'm not saying that we should stalk people and see what you're doing, but we aggregate data and we're trying to see if there's any discrepancy between what they feel and what they perceive and what they do, and usually there is. So when I'm going to give you one example that I use a lot because it's really telling. I'll hopefully have 1 minute. Okay. So imagine a game where you have melee players and range players. So let's say a brawl, and you have those type of players. Typically, the game designers are going to make it so when you sprint backwards, it's going to be less fast as if you sprint forward. Because if it's the same velocity, then the melee characters can never catch up to the range characters that are killing them as they run backwards. So usually, sprinting backwards is less fast. It's by design, because otherwise it's fucking up the balance. For a typical game, at some point the players were super pissed, like, the backward sprint is really too slow, you have to change it, it takes forever, oh my god, blah, blah, blah. If you react to what they say and say, okay, let's make it faster, this is actually the wrong answer. You should have to stop and think about what's going on here, because for balancing, we need this. Another solution is to think about their perception. And so the way it was solved is that the animators, instead of having the animation of sprinting backwards, something like this, made it go faster, but we did not change the velocity, so it looked like this. And then the complaints stopped. It's really important, like, we do not perceive the world as it is. Your players, what they're gonna tell you, you don't take it for granted. Try to figure out why do they feel that way. And that's our job in UX research. It's not really looking at problems and finding solutions. It's finding what are the right problems to find solutions for. Why is this happening more than what is happening? And that's why if you only focus on telemetry data, that can be tricky, because usually it tells you what's going on, not necessarily why. It can tell you why if you have good analysts and you have good hypotheses, but usually finding out why is the most important part. I hope that helps. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Celia.
Dziękuję. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.